Okay, so today we're talking about hashes. How many times am I going to say that? At least 5. To start off, I would love to do a little Jamboard. And I want to know, what do you all know about arrays and hashes? So let's go ahead and let's take about 3 to 4 minutes. And I'm going to drop this link in the chat. I'd love for y'all to just start like free flowing. What do you currently know about arrays and hashes? So like, what do you know about arrays over here under this arrays area? What do you know about hashes? And we'll just start free flowing some info for a few minutes. Just keep going until I tell you to stop. Nice, good. Loving it so far. My favorite thing about these Jamboards is things like anonymous wolf, anonymous manatee, anonymous llama. Cool, let's just take like 1 more minute. Excellent. All right, let's take like 15 more seconds. All right, to wrap up your final thought. And go ahead and stop putting things on the board. Okay, cool. Let's do a little bit of organization. First and foremost, I have very strong food opinions. And one of my very strong food opinions is that runny egg yolks are disgusting. So I'm sorry, that hash is gone. All right, so let's see. Array has indexes, hashes. Ooh, can be random. Yep, I like it. So I'm just going to do a little ordering of these things. So like order is important, collection of things. Yep, you can have any data type. I like it. So I'm seeing a lot of this like array is ordered. I really like all this. Arrays are ordered. Yep, array equals ordered. Great, love it. List of things, collection of things. Cool, I'm gonna move some of these things around. Cool. Oh no, other people are moving things around too. Order is not important. Yep, great. These all look really good.
Megan?
Yes?
Did you ever figure out who was so meticulous about evenly spacing the Post-its in 2011? On the Jamboards?
I have no idea what you're talking about, so no.
Okay, bye.
It wasn't me. All right, cool. A couple of things that I just want to, oh, okay. Everyone's moving things around. I love it. All right, so the big things that I want to like key into here, arrays and hashes are all collections of things or lists of things. Arrays and hashes are both collections. The biggest difference between them is an array is an ordered list. And so we refer to things in an array by their order, or in programming language, we refer to elements in an array by their index. Arrays are ordered. Hashes are not ordered. I love this one. Hashes, not ordered. It's an unordered collection. So a hash is a collection of things. It's not ordered. So we don't refer to things in the hash by an index because that just really doesn't make any sense for a hash. We refer to them based on a key value pair. Key value pair. Cool, excellent. All right, I'm gonna quit this Jamboard because it's getting too messy. I don't know how much I like Jamboards. Maybe I will never use them again. We'll see. All right, so those are the big things. Let me go ahead and, yep, I'm gonna get out of here. Get out of here, get out. Oh, this recording is gonna be so much fun. All right, let's go ahead and I wanna open up just like, let's just open up some notes here. Come on, Adam, you can open. There we go. Close all the other tabs. Sorry, when I go straight from one-on-ones into lessons, I'm just very unorganized. I apologize. I'm like a hash, I'm unordered. All right, cool. Now we've got some notes. All right, great. So hashes. Let's just recall the key points. A hash is a collection, just like an array. So a collection of things, or in programming terms, elements, things, elements, things, something. A hash is unordered. I'm gonna put this in caps. A hash is unordered, unlike an array. Unordered. Because a hash is unordered, we refer to, I'm gonna say we'll refer to the elements in a hash as key value pairs. If we think about like how that relates to an array, I could say something like we refer to the elements in an array as index element something. So arrays are ordered, they have an index. Hashes are unordered, they have a key that points to a value. This is going to make more sense when we actually start looking at some hashes. I'm just throwing random words at you at the moment. Really helpful. Let's see, what else do we need to know about hashes before we start playing around with them? Like an array, hashes can include any data type. So an array could be like a list of strings, a list of dogs, a list of other arrays. Hashes can also have like any data types included in them. Okay, cool. These are some words about hashes so far. Let's take a look at what a hash actually is. Let's say that we have, I'm gonna do like just a little Ruby thing here. Let's say that we have a grocery list, and in our grocery list, we want, I'm gonna start this as an array. Let's say we want like 6 eggs, just kidding, we want 3 eggs, I'm sick of typing. We want like 1 carton of milk, and we want 2 avocados. Avocado? I don't know why I always choose things that are difficult to spell because I'm really not great at spelling. Okay, cool. So we've got this grocery list. We could format it like this as an array, but this is quickly going to get a little unwieldy, right? I already decided like, I guess I don't actually need 6 eggs because it just takes so much time to type out each particular egg. So while this like does give us all the information that I need to go to the grocery store and get this stuff, it's not the most helpful. It's not the most useful. It would be much more useful if I had a list that was something like, I want 3 eggs. I want 1 carton of milk, mild. I want 2 avocados. Yes. This is a better grocery list. Yes. Yes. So how do we actually like create that in code? With a hash. Bye-bye, array. You're not useful to us right now. We want a hash, which, as some of you noted in the Jamboard, is created with curly braces, not square braces. Square braces, square brackets is array, curly braces is a hash. And so inside this hash, we're going to model our list as key value pairs. So in my grocery list, I could have a key value pair of 3 eggs that might look something like this. Nope, that's not what I want. And I might have a key value pair representing 1 carton of milk like this. Carton of milk is 1. And actually these should be strings. Wow, I'm really scatterbrained today. And I might have 2 avocado. Avocado, 2. So now in this hash, I have all the same information I need to go to the grocery store. It's just formatted in a slightly easier way to like figure out like, how many eggs do I need? 3. How many cartons of milk? 1. How many avocados? 2. Cool. Questions so far? Joey.
This should be pretty easy. Is there any, does it have to be structured syntactically like that, or could you like indent them out so it's like in a clear line?
Yeah, I could create this hash all on 1 line. Oops. So this works. I personally prefer having them on separate lines just because it's easier for me to read, but either way will work.
Okay.
Ryan.
You said it could be any data types inside. So if the egg string was inside of an array, would it still work?
I could syntactically, yes, I could do this. However, I would say you will very rarely have keys that are arrays. But yes, I could do this. Joe R, sorry.
Yeah, so in terms of syntax, instead of always using the hash rocket, I'll put it in the chat, but like, can you do it without like what I have posted?
Let me see the chat. Yes, and we will get to that later.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, nope, good question. All right, cool. So just to go over the basics, again, hashes are collections, just like arrays. Big difference between hashes and arrays. Arrays are ordered. You put something into an array in a specific order, it has an index, and you use that order to refer to the things in the array. A hash is unordered. You put things into a hash and you refer to those things by the key that they have instead of the index. I think that's all I want to say about that right now. So a hash is another type of collection. It's a big difference from an array is that it is unordered. An array is ordered. All right, cool. Let's jump into pry here. Let me make this full screen. Let me make this a little bit bigger. I'm just gonna play around in pry. I wanna talk first about how do we actually create a hash? There's generally, I'm gonna say there's 3 different ways to create a hash. The first is by using a hash literal. So I could create a hash literal like this, hash literal equals, and then opening and closing curly brace. That will create a hash. I can confirm that this is a hash by asking this hash literal, hey, what class are you? It's a hash. So that's one way that I can create a hash. I can create a hash by instantiating a new instance of the hash class. So I'm going to call this hash new. And I can say that this is going to be hash dot new. And that will give me a new hash. Question for the group. Is hash literal the same thing as, or does it equal hash new? Are these 2 things equivalent? Give me a physical thumbs up if you think they are equivalent, and a thumbs down if you think that they are not equivalent. Is hash literal equal hash new? Got some thumbs up, some thumbs down, some thumbs to the side. I like it. They are the same thing. In Ruby, when we're comparing 2 different hashes, we are looking, Ruby looks at what is inside the hash. What key value pairs exist? Does this hash have the same key value pairs as this other hash? If yes, those 2 things are equal to each other. If no, they are not equal. So regardless of how I create this hash, these two empty hashes are the same thing. Hash literal, hash.new, same thing. Joe.
Yeah, sorry. So when you're creating new hashes, do they already have like a default value, I guess you would say? That's like,
Great question. They do, and we are going to talk about that shortly. I love it. Joe's just like, hey, Megan, can we move to the next part of the lesson? That'd be great. I love it. Keep it up, Joe. Yeah, Lee, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, you just named it hash underscore literal and hash underscore new just so that we could tell the difference, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I just wanted to give it variable names so you knew, like, this is the one that I created using the hash literal syntax. This is the one that I created using hash.new.
Cool, thanks. I definitely might have accidentally made all of my hashes like literal and new, so I appreciate that clarification.
Oh, yeah, no worries. All right, cool. So to Joe's question, hashes do have a default return value when you try and access something that's in the hash. So I said earlier, when I was talking about like arrays and hashes, with arrays, we use the index to grab information out of the array. With a hash, we use the key to grab information out of an array. So, and we do it actually in like almost the exact same way as we do an array. So if I wanted to grab some information out of either of these hashes, I could do so with square bracket notation. So if I wanted to like ask my hash literal, hey, how many, or like what's at the key of muffins? I could do something like this. So I'm saying, hey, hash literal, give me the value that is at the key of muffins. And it will give me nil, because nil is the default value for any requested hash information. We're going to talk more about this, but the reason I wanted to show you this right at this point is because the third way to create a hash is with a different default value, something other than nil. So often we need to create a hash where the default value is like 0. And so we can do that. I'm going to call this one hash.new default. We can do that with hash.new and send new an argument of whatever we want the default value to be. So now we have a new hash. It's just an empty hash. It is the same kind of object. It's equivalent to our hash new, and it's equivalent to our hash literal, but it has a default value. So if I tried to ask this hash, hey, what have you got going on at the key of muffins? Instead of nil, I'll get 0. Okay, we're going to talk more about accessing values later, but the key piece right now is 3 basic ways to create a hash with the curly braces, hash literal, with new, hash.new, with new and a default value, hash.new, whatever the default value is. Jennifer, go for it.
Do you have like a quick example as to when it would be better to use a hash with nil as a default versus 0? I'm thinking in my head, but I don't have a good.
Can you ask that question again later?
Yes, I can.
That would be great. Yeah, ask that again later. Dougie.
Could you go over one more time where muffins came from? Is that synonymous with 0, saying that we're putting it at the
This
well, it wouldn't be the first index because it's not an array. So
right. Yeah, I just wanted to show what happens if I try and access something that doesn't exist in a hash. And in my hash new default, there's nothing in here. It's empty. I wanted to show what happens when you try and access something that doesn't exist, because it's directly related to why there's like this third way of creating a hash. We'll talk more about like what is this like square bracket thing, what's happening here. We'll talk more about that in just a second. So if you still have questions like at the next like palm, ask again. Cool. All right, I think, let's see, it's 2:25. Let's go ahead and take 5 minutes and we'll come back at 2:30 and talk more about how do we like put data into and get data out of a hash. So come back at 2:30. Cool. I think you should still, can I get a thumbs up if you're still looking at my terminal? Or thumbs down if that is not true. Thank you. Okay, great. All right, sweet. So before the POM, we talked about the 3 ways that you can create a hash. Yeah, Joe. Oh, nope. Okay. So before the POM, we talked about the 3 ways that you can create a hash. Let's go ahead and talk about accessing and adding values to a hash. So I'm just going to clear this and I'm going to create a new hash, and I'm going to do it with the hash literal syntax. But this time I am going to actually add some key value pairs when I create the hash. So I'm going to create a hash called suitcase. And using the hash literal, I'm going to start my hash with the curly brace. And then inside this suitcase, I'm gonna put some socks, and I need 4 pairs of socks, and I'm gonna put some jeans, and I just need 1 pair of jeans, and what? Yep. And I'm gonna mess it up. that happens. Okay, I got a syntax error. I actually meant to put a hash rocket here instead of just an equals, so it's probably gonna get really mad at me. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, redo. We're gonna make a suitcase. And in the suitcase, we're gonna have some socks. And we're gonna use the hash rocket to point to 4. And we're gonna have some jeans. And we're gonna use the hash rocket to point to 1 pair of jeans. And then we're gonna end our hash. Okay, so now I've got a suitcase, and I want you to show me using your fingers how many key value pairs are in this suitcase. How many key value pairs are in this suitcase? Great. I'm seeing lots of 2s, which is correct. We've got 2 key value pairs. We've got socks 4 and jeans 1. So that's great. But what if I need to actually like access any of this information? What if I have forgotten how many socks I packed? I can access the value at a key, at a specific key using square brackets. So just like if this were an array and I wanted to see like what was at the first index or what was at the 0 index or what was at the -1 index, I'm going to ask my hash for values at specific keys. So in this case, I want to see what the value is at socks. I can't remember how many socks I packed. Oh, 4. I packed 4 socks. So this square bracket notation is how we access data within our hash. We always pull the value information based on the key where that value is stored. That means that our keys should be like the label of things, the label of the information that we're trying to store here. In my suitcase, my labels are the types of clothing and the values are the important bits, like the number of socks, the number of jeans, whatever. So I would think about keys as the I would think about keys as the label or the name that I'm going to use to retrieve whatever the value is at that location in the hash, at that key location in the hash. Did I see someone's hand go up?
Yeah, that was mine, but you reiterated your point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yep, no worries. Cool. So what I think about key value pairs is like, I want that key to be something meaningful that I will remember, like, oh, if I need to get the value of whatever it is, I'm going to refer to it based on its key. So keys in hashes are kind of like indexes in arrays. We refer to different elements in an array with the index. We refer to different values in a hash with their key. Yeah, Andrew. Other Andrew. Andrew Schaefer.
So I'm just wondering what happens if you accidentally or because you're silly for some reason put socks but have the same key when you create the hash. Like if I say jeans 1 and then they have right after it jeans 5.
So if I try and create a hash with 2 of the same key, Ruby is not going to like it. So in Andrew's suitcase, if I create, we'll do your jeans example. Jeans pointing to 1, and then jeans pointing to 1, and try and create this hash. It's going to give me this. Oh, actually, I expected it to give me an error. It's giving me a warning. Jeans is duplicated and overwritten on line 20. So if oh, you know what? I didn't do a good job of. Well,
so if it was jeans 1 and then jeans 5, then it would throw away the 1 and keep the 5.
Yes.
That's what
yes.
overwritten means. Okay.
Yes. So yeah, if we create Andrew's suitcase again, jeans 1 and now jeans 5, Andrew's suitcase is just going to have genes 5. So you cannot create a hash in this way with duplicate keys, because hashes cannot have duplicate keys. And if you think about it, it makes sense that a hash couldn't have a duplicate key, because we use those keys to pull information from the hash. So if a hash had 2 different keys for genes and we asked that hash, hey, what's the value at the key of genes? How would it know which value we wanted? It wouldn't. So you cannot have duplicate keys in a hash. Keys must be unique. Just like in an array, there are not 2 index 0s. There are not 2 index 3s. Joe R., did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, you might have just said this. I was taking
It's
notes. So if you did do that though, would the value get replaced by the new like key value that you put in? Like it would just overwrite it basically? Okay.
Yes, it would just override it. So I created Andrew's suitcase to show that I cannot create a hash with 2 keys the same. If I look at this original suitcase, if I try, let me think about this. Do I want to get to this point yet? Yes. You're doing a really good job of helping me drive this lesson forward, Joe. I really appreciate it. So
It's totally on purpose.
so I've got this suitcase with 2 key value pairs in it. Let's say I wanted to add some key value pairs to this suitcase. I can do that by saying, hey, suitcase, go ahead and at the key of shirts, let's create a key value pair for shirts 3. And now if I look at my suitcase, I've got socks, jeans, and shirts. So the way that I add a new key value pair to a hash is totally different than the way we typically do it for an array. With an array, we usually like push or shovel things onto the end of an array. With a hash, because it's unordered, there is no end of the array. There's this idea of like pushing something onto the end of the array just doesn't really make a ton of sense because a hash is unordered. So what we do is we actually tell it at this key, make the value equal to 3. And so if, as Joe asked, if let's say I couldn't remember, I forgot that I had already put jeans in there, and I do something like this, suitcase, jeans. I actually decide I need 2 pairs of jeans. Oops, not like that. That will give me a syntax error. I need 2 pairs of jeans in my suitcase. When I run this, show me with like your fingers how many jeans are going to be in my suitcase. What's the value going to be at the key of jeans? Great, I see some guesses. Let's take a look. If I look at my suitcase, jeans is 2. I have overwritten that value. Almost as if this were a variable. I'm resetting the value of this at this key of jeans. Yeah, Lee.
So is there a thing as adding to the value versus just resetting the value?
Yes. Yeah, so if I wanted to add to this value, I'd love to actually, yeah. So if I want to add to my suitcase, I'm going to clear this out just to get us back to a clean slate. Let's say I want to add 1 more pair of jeans to my suitcase. So instead of 2, I want 3. If we think like, okay, I can grab the value of jeans, and if I think this is sort of like a variable that's holding on to a number, how would I add 1 to a variable that's holding on to like an integer? Yeah, Joey.
Plus equals.
plus equals. Yep. And with a hash, you can do the same thing. I can say I want it to plus equals 1. I'm going to add 1 pair of jeans. And so now if I look at my suitcase, I've got 3 jeans. Cool. And so this is a great use case for creating a hash where the default value is 0, because I might sometime need to add, like increment up a value where the key doesn't yet exist. So let's say I've totally forgotten what's in my suitcase, but regardless of what's in my suitcase, I want to add 1 more hat. If I try and increment right now, what do you think is going to happen? Think to yourself for a minute. I created this hash with a hash literal, so it does not have a default value. I don't care how many hats are in there now, but I want 1 more than whatever's in there. What do we think Ruby is going to do? Let's run it and see what happens. Undefined method plus for nil. So with this hash that I've created, because it doesn't have any sort of default value, if I ask it to do anything around a key that doesn't exist yet, it's going to start off with nil. So what I'm basically trying to do here is say like nil plus equal 1, which that just won't really ever do what I want it to. So it would be really nice if this hash were set up with a default value so that I could just increment. I want one more of those, even if I don't have one in there already. So this, I think, gets back to Jennifer's question before. So Jennifer, I'm going to restate your question. If I get it wrong, please let me know. So Jennifer had asked before, like, why would we want to do something like this? And when would we want to not do this? When would we want to give it a default value? When would we want to leave it as just a hash literal? And so I would say if my values are going to be integers, I want my default value to be 0. It's just going to be easier to work with. If all my values are going to be integers, I want to create that hash with a default value of 0 because it'll be easier to work with. If my values are not integers or not numbers, I don't want to give it a default value of 0 because that just doesn't really make sense with what I want that hash to do. Cool. Okay, so key piece here, we access information in a hash by referencing the key within that hash. So something like jeans. We can change the value at a specific key as if this whole thing were like a variable. So if I want to reset the value, I can just say equals something new. Or if I want to increment the value, I can say plus equals 10. Now I've got 13 pairs of jeans in my suitcase. We went from 1 to 13 real quick. But the key piece here is when I need to access information in a hash, we use the square bracket notation and we access the value at specific keys. What questions do y'all have so far? Yeah, Jennifer.
So just to put it in like a real world context, when you would be working with integers, would be like a good example would be like if you're taking inventory at a restaurant, right?
Sure.
Because then, okay.
Yes. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, so you might have actually answered this and I just missed it, but with your example with hat and it returns nil. Now, if you did give that the assignment of 0 at the beginning, then could you add 1 to that?
Yes. If I had created my suitcase at the very beginning with suitcase equals hash.new, actually, let's do this. I'm going to call this Joe's suitcase. If we create this with hash.new 0, so now Joe's suitcase is an empty hash. I can just start like adding hats to it. Using the plus equals 1. Cool, plus equals 1, plus equals 1, plus equals 1. We can get lots of hats in there. But even though I started with no value here, because the default value is 0, it will allow me to increment on that 0.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Joanna.
So when working with integers and the default value, does it always have to be 0, or could you start with like a different integer? Like if I had a pack of socks and like it automatically came with 2 colors for each, you know what I mean? Or would that just not come up a lot?
You could start with any value. I'm going to say it's not going to come up very often. We almost always start counting from 0. But yeah, I could, we could create like Joanna's, did I spell your name right? I don't know. Joanna's suitcase could be hash.new 12. So now whatever we add or whatever we ask for, we always start with 12 of everything. How many shirts are, like, what's the value at this key of shirts? 12. Now what's interesting here, if we ask for the value at this key of shirts 12, this sort of makes it seem like if we look at Joanna's suitcase, there will be 12 shirts in there, but there's actually not. We have never actually created that key. So if you start with a value, with a default value that's not like 0 or like an empty string or something that's representing like the very starting point, it can get pretty confusing. All right. Okay. The next thing that I want to touch on is I want to go more into like what can a hash contain? So I said earlier, a hash can have any data type in it. And what I mean by that now more specifically is that keys can be any data type and values can be any data type. So I could create, let's do this like wacky suitcase and say, so we can have, we've already seen we can have like a string that's a key. We could also have a value, or yeah, a key that's a string. Sorry, we've had a key that's a string. We could also have a value that's a string. We can have a value that is an array. So now I've got like my t-shirt and my collared shirt. I could have a value that's a Boolean. So I could say, did I remember my toothbrush? Yes, true. I could have, let's see, what else? I think that's all I want to get into. They could be many other things, but yeah. Let's see, I'll do one more. I could have a key that is a number or an integer or anything pointing to, I want 3 socks, shirts, okay, jeans, whatever. Great, I can mix all this up. Oh, damn. I can mix all this up and it should work, except that I put a syntax error in and now it will be very mad at me. So hold please, yep, wacky suitcase. Yep, socks too, yep, okay, great. And where's my toothbrush? True, and I'll just type this one out, jeans. And then if I get my syntax correct, there we go. Okay, cool. This is a hash. It works. I don't love it. I would say always try and keep all your keys the same data type and all your values the same data type. If you have a hash that has keys that are many different data types and values that are many different data types, maybe instead of a hash, you should be creating like a class, like an object, a type of object. But just wanted to show you, a key can be any data type, a value can be any data type. I'm going to go back to my notes real quick. Let's see, can include any data type. Typically, I would say like 99% of the time, keys will be strings, symbols, or instances of objects. Keys will almost always be strings, symbols, or instances of objects. We've seen a lot of strings. We will talk about symbols. Y'all will struggle your way through figuring out instances of objects. Dougie.
In the example that you had up, hopefully it's not gone forever, but in the example you just had up, how would you have accessed t-shirt, to the example in your wacky suitcase, if that's the only value you wanted returned?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to show you how I would access this. And I will say we are going to have a specific lesson around accessing nested information. But let me show you how I would do this. So if I just wanted to get this string to be returned, I would say, hey, wacky suitcase, I need some information from the value at shirts, which if I run this, it gives me this array. And so from this array, I want the element that is at the index 0, t-shirt. And we'll talk more about how to access information in these like nested collections. I think either later this week or next week, I can't remember. Great question. What was I saying before that? Oh yeah, so keys are almost always strings, symbols, or instances of objects. Let's see, 254. What other questions do y'all have so far? And then we'll take a pause before we talk about symbols. Any other questions? Yeah, Ksenia.
So maybe it's a dumb question, so forgive me ahead of time. So we can call on the value and see, we can call on the key and see the value. Can we do the opposite?
No.
Okay.
You cannot. It's not a silly question. So I said before, keys must be unique. You can't have duplicate keys. And that's what gives us the ability to say, I need the value at the key of shirts or at the key of socks. Values do not have to be unique. You can have the same value. So if I look at my basic suitcase again, I could add, let's see, I've got 3 shirts. I could say I want, let's see, dresses. I could say I want 3 dresses in there as well. So now I've got the same value on 2 different keys. So there's no mechanism that's like, get me the key at this value. I should say there's no mechanism that I know of.
So like if I wanted to get like a little bag for donation and I wanted to get like 3 of each or 3 of whatever I have, there is no really way to do it with that method. Like I wanted, you know.
I think
we have the minimum number we have is 3 here, right? So I want 3 dresses, 3 shirts, 3 jeans, and 3 pairs of socks.
Yeah, I would say if you find yourself in the situation where you are wanting to get the key based on a value, you're probably not using the correct data type. Either your hash should just be flipped. You should just flip those keys and values, or maybe you really should be using like an array or some other tool.
Is there a method to flip them?
Not that I know of.
Flip.
Maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to Logan and then Olivia.
Is there a way you can use enumerables on the hashes?
Yes, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay, thank you.
Olivia, did I just answer your question?
No, can you just go back to the notes? I'm missing the
Oh, yeah.
last.
Cool. All right, I will pause here on these notes. Let's take a palm. Let's come back at 3:02. Let's come back at 3:02. Okay, great. Excellent. So one of the last questions that we had before the palm was if we could iterate over a hash, and we can. A hash is a collection, just like an array. And so anytime we have a collection, we often will need to use some iteration or some enumerable to work with that data. So iterating over a hash works almost identically to working with arrays. So I'm just going to write, yeah, I'm going to put this in my notes. So you can iterate over a hash with each or any enumerable. Enumerable. So that's, think like map, find all, count, sum, etc., etc. And the way that this works, the syntax for it is if we were going to like iterate with each, we would call each on our hash. And then in our block variable area, this is the difference between iterating over a hash and an array. This is the key difference. With a hash, we can put 2 block variables in here, one representing the key and one representing the value of each key value pair that we're iterating over. So when we iterate over a hash, we can give it 2 block variables, a key and a value. Then we like do whatever we need to do and end. So this is the syntax for iterating over a hash. The key piece being, instead of giving 1 block variable that represents each element in an array, we give 2 block variables and they represent each key value pair in the hash. So as we iterate over a hash, we have access to the key and the value when we give it these 2 block variables. Yeah, Lee.
So then will it iterate over each the key and the value? So if you have like, if you wanted to do like upcase essentially, or no, sorry. Yeah, like let's say you wanted to do that, but you only wanted to do that for the values, would that be something different if you don't want to iterate over both? Am I making sense what my question is?
Yeah, so if you want to do something just with the value, I would still give it a key and a value. You just might not ever reference the key in the block of what you're doing. It's just you have access to both these things, whether you need them or not. When you iterate over a hash, it's always going to give you, you're always going to have access to that key value pair that you're on. You might not use one piece or the other, but you'll always have access to both.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin.
Hi, I'm not sure if I missed this answer while I was taking notes. Well,
worries.
with each, it still does not return, it always returns the original hash still, right? So if you try to manipulate something on the value side, would it not stick?
What I'm going to say is each will return the original collection. So depending on what you do inside the block, it may or may not affect what the original collection is, just like with eaching over an array. Andrew Schaefer.
Yeah, so if I wanted to iterate over a hash and I wanted to do it in numerical or alphabetical order, is there a way I can do that? No.
Nope. Hashes are unordered collections. So if you have a hash and you find yourself feeling like, ooh, man, I wish this was in a specific order, hash is probably not the right thing. Maybe then you need an array of hashes potentially, but a hash is specifically an unordered list. So if whatever collection you have is order dependent, hash is probably not the most correct tool. Yeah, great question. Now I might pull out all the values of a hash and like sort them and do something else with them, but the strict storage of that information, I want to make sure that a hash is not order dependent. I should be able to mix it up all different ways, and it's still this. It doesn't like impact the meaning of that data. Okay. Cool. I want to show two things. I want to actually show something real quick. I'm going to take a step away from iteration, and I just want to be super clear about one piece of this. I think I said it earlier, but Andrew's question just reminded me of this. When we compare two different hashes, Ruby is comparing the key value pairs in each hash to say, does this hash have the same key value pairs as this hash over here? So if I'm going to create like hash one. This is a terrible name, but just go with it for a sec. Hash one is A pointing to 1 and B pointing to 2. And hash 2 is B pointing to 2 and A pointing to 1. Okay. Visually, these things look different to our eyes because in hash 1, the first key value pair our eye comes to is A1 and then B2. And in hash 2, it's the opposite. So visually, these things look a little bit different, but because hashes are specifically for storing unordered data, hash 1 is the same as hash 2. They have the same key value pairs. Okay, just wanted to harp on that a little more. Get on my soapbox about it. All right, cool. Okay, let's go back to iterating. I'm going to pull up my suitcase again. So if I wanted to iterate over this suitcase, I had in my notes the syntax, but just to show that this actually does work, I'm not just pulling a chain. I can say suitcase.each do, and here I can give it 2 block variables, one that is going to indicate my key and the other that will be my value. So in this case, I probably want something like, let's see, what are these things? These are like articles of clothing, article, or like maybe type of clothing, something like that. My keys are different like types of clothing, and my values are like the quantity that I need. And so then in here, I can do whatever I need to, like I could print out like, I have packed this quantity of type, and end that. And I see like I have pack 4 socks, I have pack 13 jeans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the return value of this iteration is the original collection. So just like each returns the original array when called on an array, each returns the original hash when called on a hash. Each returns the original collection. But one of the reasons I wanted to do this is when you iterate over a hash, just like an array, just like anything really, we want to give names that are meaningful. So yes, this is a key and a value, but that's not super meaningful to me. Like, what are the keys? What are the values? I don't know. So try and give like more descriptive names. Okay. Current questions. All right. There's one more thing. Yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a lot more things I want to say, but there's one more area of discussion that I want to get to before I let y'all go. And that is we're going to talk about symbols, which is a new data type. So just a refresher, strings are data types, integers are data types, floats are data types. What's another data type? An array is a data type. There's another data type that y'all have seen and we haven't really discussed, and that is a symbol. So this is another data type. It's a symbol. And the reason why I'm jibber jabbering about symbols is because 99% of the time, keys will be strings or symbols or instances of objects. But very, very often, like the most important one, the one that you will probably see the most in your programming career is symbols. Many, 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 many times, keys will be symbols. And so what does that look like? If we have like a symbol hash, we'll do a symbol suitcase. This might look something like this, where we've got a symbol for jeans, and that's pointing to the value of 2. And we have a symbol for shirts, and that's pointing to the value of 3. And so now we have a symbol suitcase where our keys are symbols and our values are still integers. But the key piece here is that our keys are symbols. Okay. If I try and access the key string of jeans, what am I going to get? Is this going to give me 2 jeans? I'm seeing some shaking heads. Nope, this gives me nil, because this key string of jeans does not exist in my suitcase. The key that does exist is the symbol jeans. Okay, so it's important to use the exact key that you are looking for in a hash. The key that I have in this symbol suitcase is the symbol jeans, not the string of jeans. It is so common that symbols are used as keys in hashes in Ruby that there is a shorthand for writing a hash with symbol keys, with keys that are symbols. And so let's go ahead, let's clear this. So I've got this first symbol suitcase. I can create another symbol. Symbol? Oh no, this word is losing all meaning. Symbol. I'm pretty sure that's how it's spelled. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so it's so common in Ruby that you have a hash where the keys are symbols that there is a shorthand for writing this. And what it looks like is instead of genes pointing to a value, we flip the symbol around and say genes colon, what is that, 2, and shirts colon 3. So this is the shorthand for writing a hash where the keys are symbols. And when I hit enter, you're actually going to see that Ruby still reads this as the full longhand version, right? Symbol pointing to blah, blah, blah. But if I'm writing it out, I can use this shorthand just to create the hash. Kevin, do you have a question?
Yeah, so let's see. Well, symbols, can you index like a letter, like get the first letter of a symbol like you would a string? I mean, they're different, but can you index that information from a symbol?
I don't know. I have never had to do that. So I don't know if you can or cannot, but you will probably not need to do that. Great question though. I mean, I guess I could try it. Like, can I get the first? Oh, that is unexpected. I was really expecting that to error out. I don't think you'll ever need to do this. I'm sad that I did that now. Joey.
So I was talking to my mentor from for the symbols, why we were using them, especially in that in the War Peace project.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they like hyper related in hashes? Because she said like the only value of them was like that they're super low memory, so like it's throwaway data that you would throw in a symbol. Yes,
that's a great question, and it's the next point that I wanted to talk about. So thank you. Before I touch on that, Kevin, did you have another question, or is your hand just okay? Cool. So yeah, so why would we use this symbol thing? It's like kind of confusing sometimes to see these symbols thrown around everywhere. The reason that a programmer might choose to use a symbol over a string is related to memory, and it's related to how Ruby will compare two different strings or two symbols. So let's see, how do I want to approach this? Okay, this is what I want to say. So keep in mind that when we try and access something from a hash, we access it with the key for that specific value. So I want to see how many jeans are in my suitcase. So what Ruby is doing is Ruby is saying, okay, is there a key that matches this value? And if so, let me give that information. And so somewhere down the road, somewhere along the way, Ruby has to compare, is this symbol jeans equal to this symbol jeans? Does this key exist in this hash? And it's this comparison which drives the decision of whether I want to use a string or a symbol. Long story short, Ruby is slow at comparing strings and fast at comparing symbols. If you remember nothing else about like why this symbol thing, just remember Ruby is slow at comparing strings and fast at comparing symbols. Okay, so why is that the case? This will be interesting to some, and for some people it will make you want to tell me to shut up. Okay, so why is this the case? If I create, let me clear this out. We're going to step away from hashes. We're just going to talk about data types for a second. If I create string string 1 is the string hello. String 2 is the string hello. String 1 is equal to string 2. But is string 1 the exact same object as string 2? And how can we figure that out? So when we talk about things being the exact same object, we're often really referring to, is this object living at the same memory location, or is the memory location of string 1 the same as the memory location of string 2? So if I say, hey, string 1, what's your, is it object ID? Yeah, string 1, what's your object ID? I get this big long number. String 2, what is your object ID? I get this big long number. And these are basically like, you could consider this like the memory address for this string. And these two strings live in different places in memory. They are two different strings. Every time I type out the string hello, I'm creating two different strings. They live in two different locations. Like someone's like in Oregon and someone's in Iowa. One string's in Oregon. Well, anyway, okay. If I do a similar thing with symbols, so if I say symbol 1 is hello and symbol 2 is hello, these two things are equal to each other. Symbol 1 equal symbol 2, yes. And also symbol 1 object ID is symbol 2. These are the same things. This symbol is what the word that we use to describe this phenomenon is, it's immutable. It is unchangeable. This string hello lives at this memory location, and every time I reference it, even if I assign it to a different variable, it is the same symbol. Sorry, did I say string before? Symbol. This symbol will always live at the same location. So what this means for the ability of Ruby to compare these two things is, if we use symbols, Ruby can just say, hey, is this key symbol that you're trying to access, does this hash have a key that's at that same memory location? Yep, great, done. So when Ruby compares these two symbols, it's like, are they the same based on where they are located in memory? And using they is actually like not that great because it's actually the same symbol. It's like, hey symbol, are you who you say you are? Yes, great. Super fast. Are they the same memory address? Yes. With a string, because they live at different memory addresses, even when they're the same, like A, B, C, same characters, Ruby then needs to compare in a different way. And the way Ruby does that comparison is by iterating over each letter or each character in the string. So Ruby's like, okay, do you both start with H? Yes, move on. Do you both then have E? Yes, move on. Do you both have L? Yes, move on. Do you both have L? Yes, move on. Do you both have O? Yes, move on. Oh, you've both ended? You are the same thing. So it compares character by character, much slower than just saying like, are you living at the same memory address? Okay. The key piece in this lesson that I want you to come away with is that many times, oh no, did I just lose this? Symbol, suitcase. The key piece is many, many times a hash will have keys that are symbols. Any hash that you have, you access values based on their exact key. So if the hash has the symbol genes, you need to use the symbol genes to access that value. If you try and use the string genes, string genes like string beans. Today is just, I'm just all over the place. That will not work. This is the thing that I care about you understanding. Hashes often have keys that are symbols, and you must use the exact symbol to access a specific value. If everything else that I said about symbols is like not landing, that's okay. Dougie, did you have a question?
Yeah, and this might be beyond the scope of this lesson, but
That's okay.
would we essentially not primarily use symbols in strings instead of symbols in hashes instead of strings, or is it not going to be that serious to the point where we're not even going to worry about the amount of data that Ruby tries to use to evaluate a string?
I'm going to say you're not going to need to worry about the amount of data and the evaluation, but it is something that I think it falls under this category of like, you might be asked about this in an interview. And if you've never heard some of these words, that might be an issue. If you don't know exactly what's going on, that's less of an issue. Does that sort of make sense? Like, I want you to have heard the word immutable before. It's okay if you're like, I don't know what that means. I want you to be able to tell an interviewer, I have heard this word.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would say you're not going to need to worry too much about it in Mod 1. And in Mod 1, you will use a variety of different keys, symbols, objects, strings, because we want you to get used to seeing all of those things. Once you get further into your programming career, you're going to find that you use symbols much more often. Jennifer.
I have a feeling that this is another can you ask later question.
No worries.
But can you explain, like in a quick way, why symbols, like symbol 1 and 2, would have the same object ID but a string? Like I know what you were saying as far as why it takes longer to compare, but why?
The why is like kind of just because. That's just how symbols are. That's how they behave. The reason that we have things like symbols, not just in Ruby, but also in other languages, is because of this like need for immutability. We want to be able to have some labeling system that is immutable in the same way that integers are immutable. The integer 13 is always the integer Nope. Oh, that is so frustrating. God, that's really annoying. Wait, what? Okay. Ignore these last 3 lines. That's really annoying. But the point here is like numbers are really nice because a 1 is always a 1. It's always this 1. It's the only one. It's the representation of this one single concept, which is 1. A symbol behaves sort of in that same way. There's only one symbol hello. It is always that one symbol hello. It is never anything else. If I like, maybe here's another thing that we could think about. And again, if what I'm saying right now is like really making it more confusing or not making sense, it's okay. This is like this is like lesson necessity plus a little extra. So if I have like hello world and it's like hello, okay, cool. So I've got a string at this hello world variable and I look at its object ID. Okay, that's where it lives at the one that ends in like 5980. And then if I say hello world, and I'm going to give it some more information, universe. Now my variable is hello world, and the address of this information has changed. You know what? I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this, Jennifer.
That's okay. The because works for me because then I don't have to try to figure it out. I get what you're saying. It's kind of like a rabbit hole into a rabbit hole thing, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
the reason, here's what I'll say. The reason that a symbol is immutable and I'm losing it. I'm losing the thread of what I want to say.
I'll just be on Google at 2 a.m. looking for a good way, and I'll share it to you when I find it.
Okay, great. I will also say, like, this is a thing that I am a professional developer. Like, this is my job. Like, these are things that we talk about, like, in the staff area. It's still hard for me to wrap my mind around. So, like, it's okay. This is not a thing that you need to be 100% on in order to get a job. I promise. And if you are in an interview and get this question, you can come back and haunt me later. All right. Okay, let's go back to just like, what do I want you to get out of this lesson? I want you to understand that this is a hash. And this is also a hash. And I want you to know how to access values using a specific key. And I want you to know that you can create a new key like this. And I want you to know that you can iterate over a hash with each or any enumerable. And the important piece is that you now have 2 block variables that you can use. Value. Cool. The symbol nonsense, it's great. Some people love memory. Lots of people love to know like exactly how computers work. I don't, which is why I struggle to explain it. So if you are super interested, you can Google some things and find some really dense, confusing articles about symbols and memory and base level programming. Ask Mike, he might know. Other questions about hashes? Yeah, let's go Ksenia and then Joey.
I guess this is an easy one. So what's the standard or like preferred way to put strings in the hash with the double quote or a single quote?
Whatever works for you. I almost always start with double quotes and then eventually I get lazy and just start using single quotes, which is not great. I should just choose one and use them always. But I would say there's no one right way. Single quotes, double quotes, doesn't matter. Joey.
So one thing I'm still like not super connecting on is like, when is it more appropriate to use an array versus a hash? I feel like they're interchangeable in most contexts. Is there like a point where it's like, yes, you need to use an array here versus you could just use a hash and you structure your code around either you're consistently using arrays or hashes?
Yeah, I would say when you are struggling to come up with what should be your keys and what should be your values, that's a good indication that you can probably just use an array. I would say if you are, yeah, this is what I'm going to say. I would always start by seeing if I could make something work with an array because it's more simple. It's more straightforward. If I can't make it work with an array, maybe it should be a hash. Start simple, build it up. If it's not immediately clear that it should be a hash, start with an array, see if you can get it to work. If you can't, then move on to trying with a hash.
Okay. Because I mean, technically you could make an index in a hash too. You could do it's like 0 to 0 equals this, that equals that. It does feel more verbose. I think that was like in the mod 1 pre-work, that was one of the questions. And I was like, I feel like a hash could be used at any location array could be. There's just more information you have to provide. But it is like, kind of in my mind, it's easier to associate the two than like, I don't know, like it makes sense to me. Like I'm searching for somebody's name and this is their like user ID or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a great point. This idea of like searching for somebody's name based on their user ID. in other languages, this data structure that we've been talking about, this hash, is often called a dictionary because you do that sort of like looking up of information. Like I'm trying to look up a person's name based on their username. I'm trying to look up their email based on their user ID. I'm trying to look up how many shirts I have based on that idea of shirts. So yeah, this data structure is often called a dictionary. So yeah, I would say that when you're using a hash, it shouldn't feel forced. If you're having a hard time coming up with key value pairs, maybe a hash isn't the right way to go. It's also if you need things to be in a specific order. So like if you wanted to track like a route, like from point A to point B, and you have like different waypoints along the way, an array is what you want because you want like the idea of this is the first stop, then the next stop, then the next stop, then the next stop.
Okay. And one more quick question, Kim, for a default response, can it be any data type? Like to go back to that user ID example, like if you pass through like a user ID, could say like no user, like if there's no key, or does it have to be like integer default?
Yeah, your default value can be anything. I will say if you're doing something other than like a string or an integer, like if you want your default value to be like an empty array, it's much more complicated setting that up.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as just sending an array into that default value argument. But yeah, you can do anything. But the more complex the data type that you want to be the default value, the more complex the setup for that is.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I've covered all the pieces that I wanted to. And I'm going to pull up the exercises, the Ruby exercises. Data types, collections. Oh, you're not seeing my screen. Cool. I would recommend doing some of these hashes, Ruby exercises this evening. If you have not already, I would dive into this, just like get some more practice working with hashes. Hashes are very important. They will be in your life from now on, so learn to love them. So in the Ruby exercises, data types, collections, hashes. Cool. With that, this was a lot of information that I threw at you. I'm going to shut up now and give you back 20 minutes of time. You're welcome. All right.